So you think Islam is evil? Today in the world there is a growing sort of idea and agenda that is being pushed, which is putting Islam in a very negative light. And the cause of this is that a big percent of the world have an extremely negative perception about Muslims. A perception which is absolutely far-fetched and not conceivable with reality. The perception and image that they have about Muslims, about Islam as a religion, is not true. Yet they go around, they generalize, and they go around thinking thoughts about Muslims that are extremely negative and could even be dangerous. And as we have seen, that they have even led to hate crime and stuff such as even murder and genocide. Now it's very important that we have this discussion, that we talk about, first of all, the history of the past, how we can learn from not falling into the same mistakes as the past people, but also really breaking down these thoughts and going through them step by step in a logical way, so we can let truth come to light. Because this video is mostly being addressed to that person who thinks something bad about Islam, who has negative thoughts. And I'm telling you, there are many people, there are a lot of thoughts, there are a lot of critiques, and most of it is not true. And I can say that. Why? Because I was not born a Muslim, and I had the same thoughts, and I know where you're coming from, and I know how the thoughts come there, and how Islam is being perceived from a non-Muslim perspective, because I have spent a large portion of my life not as a Muslim, but I have gone through absolutely every single argument that exists against Islam that is being perpetrated by the far right, by non-Muslims, by people with agendas, and which creates a even dehumanizing image of 25% of the people on this earth. So this video will be more of a video that refutes, rebuttals, and sort of goes through whatever comes to my mind in terms of this topic. Again, where there are arguments, topics against Islam, to those people who think that Islam is evil, we're going to show you how it's not evil, how Muslims are not your enemy. And I think this video will be increasingly important as we step into the next couple of years, where things can really accelerate. So Bismillah Rahman Rahim. I don't know exactly where to start, but we can go with some of the main arguments that we see today. And we can see an emerging trend of people, especially influencers, who are speaking about Islam. They build their brand around anti-Islamic content, about anti-Islam, going around and spreading their filthy lies, and even sometimes speaking to Muslims, but really attacking their religion. And one of the things you see that they say, that they claim, is that Islam wants to take over the West. Now let's explain this a bit, because this is an argument which puts Muslims directly in a sort of position of being a threat. Anyone who sort of hears that is like, oh really? So they want to kill me, right? So that is like immediately puts them in a threat as an enemy. The person who's saying that has very ill intentions. And he may be believing that this is true, but it is not true, and we'll explain you why. First of all, there are Muslims in the West, and we're not going to talk about how they behave or what they do in the West right now, but we are going to talk about what the religion of Islam says as about Muslims going there. Because every Muslim has, in the general sense, in the default, has to be living in a Muslim country. The highest level of sort of the biggest thing a Muslim can do living in a non-Muslim country is doing hijrah. I'm sure you heard about this. It's going away from the land of disbelief to the land of belief, and living in a Muslim land where their rights are protected, where they can have their religion and establish it freely, where they can pray, where women can go covered without any issues. That is the best situation for a Muslim. So why are Muslims living in the West? Well, the scholars have discussed possible reasons that admit Muslims to go to non-Muslim countries, and they have to have a valid reason, and they mainly fall down to two reasons, which are being a being a refugee of war, where they have to, and the clause here is that they have to come back once the situation of the country settles. They have to. That's a part of the permission that the scholars have given, because at default they're not allowed. And the second thing is job. Job for economic purposes. They are allowed to travel to a non-Muslim country, but they again have to come back. It's not allowed to sort of settle down there and just think that this is my place, and you're coming from a non-Muslim country and think you can settle there forever. Scholars have unanimously agreed that Muslims need to do hijrah back to their countries. They are not allowed to even, we're not even allowed to travel to visit non-Muslim places. So the point I'm trying to make here is that there wasn't even supposed to be Muslim settling long-term in the West or in non-Muslim countries at all. They all were supposed to be there for short-term or come back once the situation in their country settled down. So now there are Muslims there, and they are through second, third, and fourth generational. And it doesn't seem that people are coming, back. And also situations in the Middle East are still unstable. But this has created a situation where now we have sort of a clear separation between a population that is native and a population that doesn't really integrate that well and is perceived as a threat. And this is sort of the problem here. But the thing is that now you have that situation, and Islam wasn't even allowing this to happen in the first place. So are Muslims coming to take over? First of all, no, we're not allowed to travel there, right? So that's the whole point. Now, second, the people who say that Islam is a threat, they act as if Islam is like one body, or like even at Islam, which is just the name of a religion, is some sort of entity or like a political union. It's not. Right now, Islam it's only a religion. There is no one body. I don't even know who and what they are referring to. Of course, they are kind of meaning the collective body of Muslims, as if they are acting in unison in anything. Actually, Muslims are maybe the most split group today in any religious order. I'm not sure, but Muslims are very split. There is not like we're acting as one body. So how can Muslims take over the West when they don't even agree on the most minor things in terms of political situations, right? So that is so far-fetched. This is like totally separated from reality. Once Islam is a caliphate, then that discussion, it really can be had, because it's about the ruler. The ruler can legitimately do an expansion project. He is allowed. It's up to him. The ruler can do what the ruler wants in Islam. That's true, but right now we don't have any ruler, and Islam, there is no real reason. There is no real collective union, right? So yes, once Islam has a ruler and the ruler deems it fit, he can go on an expansionist project, but there are rules. There are rules in Islam, and how can this expansionist project be? It's not allowed in general to start wars unless they are in defense. This is basic Islamic principles. So unless there is a threat from a neighboring country, he's not allowed to think about expanding, because default is peace. And in addition, the main goal of any expansionist project is dawah. So as long as the country, which may be not in the best odds with the caliphate, as long as that country allows for mosques to be built and for Muslims to live, then yes, there is even less need for any, because the Muslims are living freely, safely, and there is no harm being done. So likewise, there will be no harm done, right? So in general, it is a very far-fetched idea, and this is one of the things that are being discussed that portrays Muslims as enemies. Now, a large portion of this comes from the sort of history of Islam and how it grew and how it spread so fast. But the point is that back in back then, the default with any empire and any sort of nation was that they are at war with each other. The default was not peace. And actually, the neighboring empires, which is both the Roman Empire and the Persian Empire, was in default at war with the Arabs and the area, and had plans to conquer Arabia several times, and there had already been conflicts from before. So this is not like the Muslims at that time just thought hey, let's go to war straight, and these people are peaceful. No, this is people who are empires who expand. Now today situations are different, and hence situations should be taken differently. But even having the discussion, even having the idea, it doesn't make any sense. And right now the only thing that happens are Muslims which are living scattered in the West, no collective body, random people, no real organization. And yes, while they all might not be behaving in their best manner, there is no collective plan to take over the West, and it's a very stupid idea, almost like the conspiracy theory back in the days that Jewish people somehow in Germany and in Europe had this big plan to take over. And while there might be some people who have different aspirations, having sort of generalizations like that as if all of them are to blame, that doesn't really make any sense, and there was really no proof to that, and most people know that that wasn't true. So let's move on to some of the other ideas. And some of the things which, paint Islam in a negative light is the aspect of slavery. And, this is a very interesting topic because, first of all, it's not entirely sure that you as a, reader or person or watching this video understand how sort of the the history of the world was. Ever since slavery was abolished around 300 years ago, maybe or more, slavery was the norm for thousands of years. And we're not talking about the type of slavery which we saw in America, because that type of slavery might have been the most brutal that has existed. But we're talking about a societal function where there are different classes of people, different levels of education, different levels of knowledge, and the lowest class are slaves. And those slaves, instead of having total freedom to do as they please, they get all their needs and desires fulfilled, not all, but at least the basic, to listen to some other person. And keep in mind that there are many societal structures which, at the end of the day had almost the same level of function, but just the term slave wasn't there. But anyway, slaves was a part of every society, absolutely every country. Your country and your genealogy has slaves in it, and slavery was a part of it. And so you might say that, of course, this is the old times, that's ancient time, now we are much better. And I agree, and Islam agrees with you, because Islam says that abolishing slavery is the best thing. The one who frees a slave gets reward in paradise. So freeing a slave and ending slavery, it's the best thing. So whoever among the Muslims who want to take slavery back are very ignorant, and in reality Islam is about abolishing slavery. And so since slavery has been abolished today, there is no reason to bring it back. And while a caliphate and a Muslim society can exist with slavery, because Islam is a compatible religion at all times, at all peoples and cultures, today, since slavery doesn't exist, it shouldn't come back. Now, there is one point about this that it should be said, that slavery in Islam, it is a function of almost a function of war, because actually the only time a person can become a slave is if they are a prisoner of war or a soldier which has been taken, or even families. That's true. That's like the idea of slaves in Islam, that they are the people whom got conquered during war. And if you analyze the whole system here, this is how it works. The Muslim army, if it wins against the enemy army, now they can take over an area, and the people can become slaves according to the caliph. Now what happens here is that each family gets assigned 1 or 2 or 3 slaves, and these slaves get integrated into society. And Muslims are allowed to marry women. Muslims are they're allowed to marry slaves. They're allowed to have relationships. They are responsible for taking care, and we have hadith about this, where the Prophet said that you should take care of the slaves as if you take care of your own family, something around that. And so the point is that this is some people that should be treated very highly. But keep in mind, there is a language barrier, there is knowledge barrier, and once all the men may have died in war, what should you do with the thousands of women and children, right? And so taking them into work and then slowly, steadily integrating them into society and then freeing them, which is the ultimate end goal. That's actually a process of reintegrating them into the society. And we're not talking about mistreatment. You're not allowed to hit a slave. You're not allowed to mistreat a slave. You're even actually, you find indications that if a slave sort of doesn't want to be a slave and does a lot of fighting against you, you should free him. So this is really about people who are in a situation that they can't do anything for themselves. Such as, for example, a person that can't speak your language, that don't understand anything, that doesn't have a job, that is a prisoner of war, all his parents died, all his, the people who took care of him died, he has nothing to do. That person can become a slave, and act in reality he has almost no better choice. Now that's just historical reality and sort of justification for slavery in Islam. But today we don't have slaves, and we can all speak the same language, and we are in a globalized world, and as far as we understand, slavery will not come back, and that's the end goal. That's the best thing. Islam wants to abolish slavery. So the whole argument is stupid. Again, it's the total opposite. Does Islam promote slavery? No, it wants to abolish it. And the most of the arguments that we find that these people bring is actually the opposite, because that's how the devil works. That's how he changes the perception. Now let's move on to the next thing about the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. A lot of the sort of demonization of Muslims come by the sort of the way they critique the Prophet, right? Because this was a man that lived in the 5th century after Christ in the Arabian desert, in an Arab society where they had their own culture. And the fact that he married Aisha radiallahu anha at the age of 6 and consumed the marriage at 9 is something which a lot of people struggle with. And that's understandable, because there are certain norms and standards that we have today in our society that are not the same as the Arabs, and that's not the same, and each culture and age had different cultures. And there are some cultures, there are some morals which society chooses. And once you understand this, that some societies have their own morals, and when we talk about morals, we talk about what is correct and what is allowed, and what is safe, and what is being people learn to be normal, and hence where people accept this and there is no harm being done, right? And there are different levels of this in societies. What one society thinks is good, another society may think is bad. Now, of course, if harm is being done, then this is something that anyone agrees to is bad. If there is violence, if there is assault, if there is rape, this is something that everyone agrees. All societies unanimously agree that this is bad, except societies which are, completely out of their mind, but there is general consensus about these things. These are moral, ethical rules which everyone have agreed to are not good, just like stealing, just like murder. And so now, did this happen with Aisha radiallahu anha? No, absolutely not. We find that yes, even though the marriage took place at an early age and the consummation took place at an early age, she had gotten through puberty and she was a woman at that point. And in Arabia, that was what they considered to be a woman. And this is not isolated to Arabia. This is all of the world, Roman Empire, the Greeks, the Jewish people had the same situations. Even the church, the religion in Europe, like the Christian church, everyone had this practice where marrying early is the best thing. As soon as people go through puberty, they are recognized as grown-ups by society and they are ready to get married. And this was the norm. The only thing is, when do people come into puberty? In cold countries, you find that it is, between 12, 13, and women go earlier into puberty, while in warmer countries, it actually speeds up a bit before, and we find out that women go as early into puberty as between 7, 8, and 9 years old. And so actually what we're talking about here is that it's something that happened within the cultural norm and acceptance. There was nothing wrong. No person, no Christian, no Jew had any problem with the marriage with Aisha, and they were against Islam. They were attacking Islam, but they never had any issues with this thing which you have an issue with because you live in the 21st century. So if you're able to open your mind and understand that there was no harm done, it has been confirmed in the text. She had puberty, it's been confirmed in the text, and she was a staunch believer and supporter of Islam for all of her life, then you understand that there is no point for me to go with this topic, because in reality it's just, and frankly it's unethical. You're judging, it's even stupid, you're judging your situation, your rules with with the Prophet. Like, imagine how many societies you will have problems with. So why are you choosing only Muhammad? Why are you only mentioning Muhammad? There are thousands of other individuals, even historically, that we know did the same thing. Why are you saying Muhammad and Islam was a bad thing, right? So you are being a hypocrite, and that's the conclusion. And now let's go to the next argument about Islam and Muslims. So if Islam is evil, what are the other arguments that we often hear? That is about their technological development, about the countries, their development and their situation. Now I find this very sort of interesting. It's a very interesting topic because first of all, now things change. We see that the Gulf countries are becoming leaders in technology, leaders in development, countries which non-Muslims are fleeing to, right? That's the first thing. Second thing is that Muslim countries, most of them were colonized. They were colonized by the British, by the French, and most colonized countries usually tend to stagnate in development, stagnate because their resources were tapped, their mindset was colonized, and there's a wide variety of societal structures that get affected so that they actually lag behind in development. And so this is a normal thing, right? And so which countries were not colonized? Well, it's the Gulf countries, and that's where we see a lot of development going on right now. And second thing is that most of these countries had foreign intervention with the governments. Iran, Iraq, Syria, Palestine, Egypt. Most of these countries have had foreign intervention, destabilization of the government. CIA has admitted doing these things. And so when you understand that actually the West has actually prevented them from growing, has actually destabilized their countries, has actually killed their leaders, bombed their people, then it's not even a hard question to answer. Why are the technological development or the situation unstable in the Middle East when the West actively goes into wars in these countries, goes into tap the resources, goes into kill leaders, fund different groups, and create instability? This is a part of their agenda, because a united Middle East is dangerous to the Western world order. So why and also, like, in general, Muslims have been at the heights of development, the Islamic Golden Age, which even brought forth the whole life to the West. The whole reason the West exists in its current form today is because of the Islamic Golden Age, which was an age of intellectual enlightenment, research, science, and medicine, so much more, where Islam and the Muslims were at the peak of the entire world, connecting Asia and Europe. And also, while Europe was in dark ages, eating their own feces and not even washing their hands and not even having water available, and dying and killing each other. And this was the dark ages, while Islam had the golden age. So in general, Islam contributed to the world science and fields of intellectuality in ways that almost no other group has ever done, except perhaps the Greeks, while even Greeks are limited to like a few fields. So this is an argument that is honestly weak, and there are a wide variety of geopolitical reasons that the situation is how it is today. Just taking on the glasses here. So the other reasons that sort of people think that Islam is an evil religion, which I often come across in discourse, it is, let me think a little bit here, is sort of what they say about human rights, or maybe gay rights and stuff like that. Now, of course, Islam is a religion where we have laws and regulations for society, for the better society. And God has created man and He's created woman. And the ones who don't even acknowledge that there are two genders can just stop watching this video. You are not rational. You're not a normal human being in the most sense. And you don't need to watch this. So as long as you understand that there are two genders, you will understand that this is the natural way to be. And in Islamic society, there are rules and regulations to protect the religion, preserve peace, and preserve the family union and the family structure. And so there are offenses in Islam, right? And there are laws and punishments in Islam. But once you study this, you will understand that These are laws to prevent society into falling into collective disarray and degeneration, basically. And for example, we do find that the laws are very effective in preventing these sort of crimes. So the crime of being a thief in Islam, as if you steal a considerably amount of wealth and you get caught, usually punishment written is to cut off the hand. And most people would not risk to steal if the fact that the ruler would start to cut hands, because the hand is so valuable thing that you realize that it's not worth the risk, right? And you might say, hey, but what about the poor person who just doesn't have anything to eat? That person will be excused. You find in the hadith of Umar that he excused people during a certain situation when they didn't have food and weren't normal. And so all people who are not normal, who have some problems in their mind, they will all be excused, because the Sharia and the Islamic society is a society based on mercy, and mercy means that you take into account the different facts. Now that's one of the things, that this is a rule of preventing collective disarray in society and ensuring peace and stability, and it really works. You see the statistics. Now there are other laws, for example the laws of fornication. Now, the laws of fornication are also a big topic, because at the most extreme level, the punishment is death. And, you can say, oh, just for a simple thing as sleeping with another person's wife, right? But this is, in Islam, a very grave thing, a very grave punishment, a very big problem for society, because if one family structure is being threatened, the whole society is being threatened. And in reality, this is a punishment which almost is impossible to be put into, let's say, production. Like, it's almost impossible to punish someone with this. Why? Because in order to be able to prosecute someone for this, there has to be 4 trusted, known witnesses. I think they have to be male, I'm not sure. 4 witnesses that witness the penetration of the action going on. So there has to be 4 people who see the action, right? And that is a high number of people who have to witness everything. And this is something which is almost impossible, because unless you're having intercourse out in the open, you will not be able to have that, And yes, people can admit that they did it, and that's another situation, that's another case. But in reality, it's impossible to persecute someone without this evidence. And there is much more things. There is whole books and discussions about this topic. The whole point is that it's a very, very hard thing to do. And it is a punishment of prevention, which hardly almost ever has been put into practice in history of Islam, and is something that creates the necessary fear in society to put it in its right place, because human beings are weak. We are people of desire, we have desires, and collectively and historically people have fallen into degenerative and sort of problems time and time again. And unless there are proper laws and regulations, societies fall, societies become corrupted, societies become degenerate. And that's why these laws are very important and actually do make total sense, because the family union is the most important thing. And if you don't agree with me on that too, you might as well not watch this video. If you don't think the family is important, there's something wrong with you, because we are naturally born to have the family. We need the family. We need the husband. We need the father and the mother. This is how we're psychologically being grown up to need, right? And and once you understand these things, you will see that this makes sense, right? And keep in mind that the punishment of death is only for the married fornicators, not for the non-married ones. And so, if you are a religious person, you should also understand that, this is something that is not unique to Islam. It's the same in Christianity and Judaism. It's been practiced in the Abrahamic religion for probably thousands of years, meaning like punishment for fornication. And that's why you shouldn't be singling out Islam as the big evil, when Judaism, Jewish people, Christian people who are true to the law, They have the same exact thing. Now, next, what we often hear is Islam's treatment of women. And this is something which I find, again, to be absolutely sort of incorrect. It's even sad that people believe these things, because we have the hadith of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, where he said, the best of you are the best in behavior, and the best of you in behavior are the ones who are good to their wives, or to their women. I think it says to their woman. It means maybe wives, maybe sisters and mothers. And even it says that in one hadith, which is not the most authentic, but it exists, heaven is at the gate of your mother, and obedience to parents, both mother and father, is extremely important. And there are rights that we have to our sisters and to our wives, and these rights are divinely ordained, and these rights ensure their safety, ensure their protection. And we in Islam have the highest level of good treatment to our wives and to our women. Actually, we cover them up, not because we oppress them. Actually, first of all, they cover themselves up. It's a religious obligation by them as Muslims. Second of all, in Islam as a society, yes, there are rules to cover, and there are rules for men to cover, and there are rules for women to cover, because we protect them from being assaulted on the streets, from being looked at wrongly, from being, from being a part of a society which will be degenerate, right? Because if you have women walking around naked in society, you will have a society which starts to fall into immorality. And so we protect society by protecting ourselves and our wives, and even the most women who are Muslim will do this themselves. It is not like the man is putting the hijab on the wife. No, that is something they do from their own will. They pray 5 times a day, they are believing, and they do their obligation to take on the hijab, just like a Jewish person, just like a Christian person. And so first of all, the veil, the covering, is not unique to Islam. It's written in the Bible, and so there's nothing unique in that to Islam. Third, is Islam sort of oppressive to women? Do they have less rights? No, absolutely not. And while there are certain situations where there has to be separation between men and women in society, Islam in general does not have anything that sort of, for example, does not permit a woman to study or to take an education. That's not true. While it is true that a woman's place naturally is to take care of children and be at home and cook, and this is something we see in any society. This is what they find interesting. This is what comes from them naturally. But the thing is that, and this is their sort of obligation as well, the union in the family usually works like this, where the man goes out to work and the woman stays home. But if she wants to, she doesn't have to stay home. In reality, the man does have a dominant position in society, in the family. In general, if what he says is the final decision, he has the decision and the woman has to obey. That is true. But that is even what we see in most countries, like in general, in many countries. In Western countries, they have very much a focus on equal rights. And the other point is that those countries also have more divorce. Why do they have more divorce? Maybe it's because the way they have their relationships do not work. Muslim countries have much lower divorce rates, and we have a societal structure, family structure, where the man is dominant. He decides, he goes to work, he has to provide, the provision is on him. He has rights to the woman. He has to give her apartment to live, to have her rights. He has to give her food. It's on him. If he doesn't do that, she can divorce him. So keep in mind, she is actually, just by being a woman, has rights that she has to get. The man has to work for her. He has to wake up at 6 a.m. and work and provide. That is his. You can even call it a punishment. Of course, it's not a punishment, but it is as if it's flipped around here. It's not the woman which is being oppressed in a way. It's the man which has more rights, more responsibilities, more things to do, has to provide for the woman. And what you find is that women are in much better conditions in these Islamic societies. Why? Because they don't have to work, and women don't really like to work, and they have periods, and they have issues, and they have emotional situations, and they are more naturally fit to be at home. And if they want to work, that's fine. Just in Islam, it says, as long as the work is halal, it's in a good situation, there's no mix between men and women, that's totally fine. And so so this is a very like stupid argument. And now there are, like, for example, some hadith which explain that, you know, a man, or in a discussion with your wife, you're allowed to hit. The word hit is sort of being translated, but it's not true. But it says basically you're allowed to, I don't know the right English word, hit, slap, or lightly touch your wife in a manner that should make her stop. Now let's explain this, because there is a hadith here, it does exist. People do translate it as hit. Now it's basically where there is a discussion, and where the last resort, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said that if you are in a situation with your wife where she doesn't obey you, she doesn't listen to you, she doesn't want to reason, then after the third time of some discussion or something like that, you're allowed to take what is basically a toothbrush. It says what is basically a toothbrush. It's like this size, and you're allowed to hit her with it. Now it's something like this, you know, like this. Basically, it's like you can do like that. That's what the hadith says. Now people like Islamophobes take that and say, hey, look, you're allowed to hit your wives. Now that's absolutely not what is allowed, because all scholars in the Islam, and I explained this in another video, explain that there should be no harm done. There is not allowed to do harm here. It's just a manner which is the last resort of what you're allowed to do to show your frustration. And that's it. No harm, no hitting, no fist, no open hand. You're using a toothbrush, a stick like this, and you can, you know, gently tap it from your anger. And so there are really no other ways on this. It's like almost sort of hard to understand. People, you know, they see the dress code of Muslims and they think that this is some oppressive thing, that this is something that is being forced, you know, and they have some perception that Islam is oppressive against women, and that's not the case. We do have different societal structures, like you just had 50 years ago, but you abolished it, you removed it, and now your divorce rates are so high. That's not the case with the Muslim society. And so we value our women, I would say, higher than any Western society and person, which in generally has a very sexualized mindset about women and doesn't value their parents, don't value their wives, divorce them, go to the next one, even don't value their children, let them go on OnlyFans. It is absolutely crazy how the tables actually turn, and how the devil makes you think that, you know, Muslims are the enemy. Now, these are some of the arguments against Islam that I often hear and that I wanted to touch on today. And in general, Islam is a religion of peace. We go around to every person we see and we see peace be upon you. And the whole reason Islam exists is as a religion is to attain salvation. And the way we attain salvation, which is consensus, which has been verified by the authentic hadith, is by being a good person, by doing good, by giving charity to the poor, by caring, by having a heart that is soft, by caring for the poor and being just with people, and by praying to God, being just to God as well, just as we would be just to other people, by placing our role in society during our responsibilities. Islam is actually very beautiful and a very neutral religion, and I invite you as a person who watched this video to take some real inner deep exploration on the religion. Take away all the negative thoughts that you've heard from non-Muslims, people who don't know the religion, people who don't give you the right facts from the scholars. When you judge Islam, judge it by what the Muslims say. Don't judge it by what a Nazi will say, because a Nazi does not represent religion, while a Muslim does. And so if you are a sincere person, you go to a Muslim or go to a Muslim website and you hear what is the religion about and what does it say. And don't think that you know better, and you can't take a verse from the Quran and just extrapolate from it whatever you think from your ass. That doesn't work. I'm very sorry. You have to listen to the tafsir, the exegesis, the understanding of the scholars, the consensus, the history. You have to see the context. And that is how you as a person will be honest to yourself, will be honest to the world you live in, right? The neighbor you have, which might be a Muslim, right? So I invite you to the religion of Islam. I will go through some of the basic principles before we end this video so you understand what Islam is really about, because Islam just says this: if you believe that God is one, if you believe that Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, is the last and final messenger, you believe in the messengers before, like Jesus, Moses, and Abraham, and you believe they were all prophets under God, that they came with one and the same message, which is to submit to God, that was their purpose. They said to the people, worship God and abolish the idols. If you believe this, then you are a Muslim. It doesn't matter what else. As long as you don't associate partners with God, you can have any other belief, but as long as you have these principles as a belief, and you, of course, during your time as a human, expand on this and start acting, you are a Muslim. And this is the most basic principles in the religion. I invite you to this religion of Islam, which is the religion to submit to God, to be in the path of the prophets, to accept the last and final messenger from the creator of the heavens and the earth. I hope this video will be beneficial. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam wa rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And I'll see you in the next one.